Welcome to this lesson on solving and writing multiplication equations. Please make sure you have these notes in front of you so we can begin our lesson. This lesson has two learning objectives. The first one says I can solve a one-step multiplication equation, and the second one says I can write a one-step multiplication equation. So for our key concepts, let's talk about the inverse of multiplication. We've previously discussed that the word inverse means opposite. So the inverse, or the word opposite, of multiplication is division. And whenever we solve equations, we want to make sure that we isolate the variable. And in order to do that, we have to use the division property of equality to keep equations balanced. So speaking of balancing equations, let's look at this scale and pretend like we're going to keep it balanced. The center will be our equal sign, or we call it the fulcrum. And in order to keep it balanced, we want to make sure that both sides are equal. So we're going to assume that each circle is the same size. And I'm going to say that this equation is balanced, or this scale is balanced, because we have 6 circles on each side. Now if I divided one side by 2, my scale is no longer balanced because I have 3 circles on the left-hand side and 6 circles on the right-hand side. So in order to balance this, I need to make sure I divide by 2 on the other side as well. So by dividing on both sides, I now have a balanced scale. This is an example of using the division property of equality because I divided both sides of my scale by 2. And now my scale is balanced. So let's use these key concepts to discuss the following examples. Alright, so for example 1, it says solve 9x equals 54, and let's check our solution. So remember, anytime a number is standing next to the variable like this, the 9 is the coefficient, and we're going to assume that we're multiplying 9 times x. So let's go ahead and rewrite this problem to be 9x equals 54. Let's draw the fulcrum down the center of our equal sign. And since I'm multiplying 9 times x, I want to use the inverse to isolate the variable, or to get the variable by itself. So instead of multiplying by 9, I'm going to divide by 9. But I want to make sure I divide by 9 on both sides. This is an example of the division property of equality because I divided by 9 on both sides to keep my equation balanced. Now on the left-hand side, we can do 9 divided by 9, which becomes 1. So x is all by itself, or you can call it 1x, it's the same thing. And on the right hand side, we can do 54 divided by 9, which becomes 6. So the value of x is equal to 6. Let's plug this back in to check our solution. So 9 times 6, when we do the math, we do get 54, so we checked our solution. Let's graph this solution of 6 on a number line. Let's start with 0 in the center, and it's in the positive region, so I'm going to place 6 about this location here, and I'm going to identify it with a solid circle because 6 is the only number that makes this equation true. For example 2, it says solve 18 equals 6 times d, and let's check our solution. So in this problem, let's go ahead and draw the fulcrum down the center of the equal sign again. And let's start on the right hand side because that's where the variable's at. So we're multiplying the 6 and the d, so in order to get d by itself, we need to do the opposite of multiplication, which is division. So let's divide this side by 6. Now if I divide one side by 6, let's keep it balanced by dividing both sides by 6. This is an example of the division property of equality because I divided by 6 on both sides. Now that we've done that, let's go ahead and divide 6 divided by 6. Well, that goes away and that becomes 1d. Let's drop the d right next to it. And on the left hand side, 18 divided by 6 becomes 3. So the value of d is equal to 3. Now remember, you don't even need that 1 in front of the d, but some people like to place it, some people don't. Let's check our solution now. Let's plug 3 back into our equation. So 6 times 3 does equal 18, so we've checked our work. Now let's graph our solution on a number line. Here's 0, here's positive 3 on the number line, and I'm going to identify it with a solid circle because that's the only number that would make my equation true. So pause the video and complete these got it problems, and we'll discuss the answers in class tomorrow. Notice I have 2 got it problems on this slide. I've got it problem A and got it problem B. And let's make sure we graph our solutions as well on a number line. For example 3, it says the area of a rectangle is 96 square feet. One side of the rectangle is 8 feet long. Write an equation for this situation. So let's draw the rectangle. And we have a length and a width. And when we multiply length times width, we can write the formula as area is equal to length times width. And the area is given to us, which is 96 square feet. So let's plug in 96 where the area goes. And they're giving us one side, so I'm going to call the length equal to 8. Our job is to figure out how wide it is. So let's plug in 8 where the L is. And we don't know what the W is, so we're just going to drop W right next to it. Remember, when the 8 and the W are standing next to each other, the 8 is the coefficient, and we are multiplying those together. So now that I've wrote my equation, that's the equation for part 1, we want to figure out how long the other side is. So I'm going to write 96 is equal to 8 times W, and I'm going to draw the fulcrum down the center of the equal sign, and I want to isolate my variable, which is on the right-hand side. Since I'm multiplying, I want to do the opposite and divide both sides by 8. So this is an example of using the division property of equality. So if I divide both sides by 8, W is now isolated, and 96 divided by 8 becomes 12. So the answer is, the other side is equal to 12 feet long. And that's the answer. So pause the video and complete this got it problem, and we'll discuss the answer in class tomorrow. So please be sure you write an equation for this situation and then solve it. So now that we've completed this lesson, go ahead and self-rate yourself and let us know how you feel. If there's any part of this video that you do not understand, please go back and watch it again. Also, come to class with some questions so we can discuss it in further detail.